Bunk Bed for a Knucklehead by Flash of Hope. One weekend later and an argument over bed instruction manuals, and the days of Sonic having a room to himself were officially over. As honorary members of the Wachowski family, Sonic couldn't wait to welcome Tails and Knuckles into the fold. Sonic didn't have to redecorate his room that much, all things considered, if you didn't count shuffling around beanbags, toys, and rugs in every direction, until Sonic agreed to leave the arranging to his parents. How else was a kid supposed to contain his excitement over his best buds moving in? The room was eventually ready for the new arrivals, but one arrival was not ready for the room.
"What is contraption?"
Knuckles asked, scrutinizing the newly assembled bunk bed sitting in Sonic's bedroom. At a glance, it appeared to be a bedding structure. Knuckles' warrior intuition informed him, but where was the vine-meshed frame and the tree bark mattress that hardened one's back? This was not a bed fit for a warrior.
That my red quilt friend is a bunk bed, the envy of kids everywhere.
Sonic draped his arm over Knuckles' shoulder and pitched the bed like it was a red, fiery race car.
"People like his plush, ladies inspiring furniture."
Knuckles stared at the tempting, comfy-looking mattress, adorned with a soft pillow.
"Oh, yes? Where have you been sleeping all your life?"
Sonic asked Knuckles, an echidna who seemed to have been living under a rock.
"Any Knuckle bed my village could spare the ground beneath my feet."
Knuckles answered, without a hint of self-awareness that sleeping under the stars wasn't the norm.
"Sonic, can I please have the top bunk?"
Tails pleaded for the coveted spot, in the hopes he'd feel right at home at the top of the bed.
"Anything for you, Tails."
Sonic led the way towards the bunk bed's ladder with a wave of his hand. After everything they'd been through, Sonic was only too happy to spoil his young fox friend with his first choice of bed.
"The fox should not have the view of the ceiling, when he can soar at any time."
Knuckles crossed his arms, feeling slighted by the fox, who could already reach great heights. Getting the top bunk, it wasn't fair, and Knuckles wasn't going to let it stand.
"So, you're saying you want dibs on the top bunk?"
Sonic deduced from Knuckles' strange way of communicating. The burly echidna had different ways of getting his point across, which made for laughs to be had and a prickly personality to get around, but behind that honorable demeanor was just a kid who wanted a bed he'd never had before.
"Tails, you cool with that?"
Sonic checked with Tails, playing mediator of all roles, when it would have been him negotiating with Maddie and Tom for a later curfew, not so long ago.
Sure, he could have just asked.
Tails shrugged with a bemused look on his face, happy to take other bed. Satisfied with Tails' answer, Knuckles climbed the ladder to his new bed, and if needed his new post.
"Thank you, us will be strategic vantage point should our enemies invade our home."
Knuckles thanked Tails and revealed the real reason behind wanting the tallest point of the bunk bed. Oh boy, even when Knuckles was choosing a place to sleep, it was straight to Gick. He's going to be a fun roommate, Sonic thought before carefully thinking about what he was going to say next.
"Knuckles, I'm not going to say it's never going to happen since you punched a hole in our living room, but Robotic is going for good this time, so it's super unlikely."
Sonic reassured the vigilant Knuckles, still wary of surprise attacks after his trust was betrayed by the backstabbing Dr. Robotnik, his first alliance outside of the Echidna village. A place where everyone he'd ever known was dependable, although Sonic spoke too much and too fast for Knuckles to keep up with at times. The blue hedgehog was the closest thing to family, and as such, Knuckles trusted his word.
"You are certain of this?"
"Sure, now let's get some shut-eye. I want to give you guys the grand tour of Green Hills, when it's not getting trampled by a giant laser death hut."
Sonic quickly changed the subject and hopped in his bed. Sonic didn't like making promises he couldn't keep, but if he could take his friends' minds off threats against their lives, even for a little while, Sonic was happy to help. drifting off to sleep in his former enemy's sleeping quarters. A beam of moonlight shining through a window invited Knuckles to remember. To remember how the stars mocked him that fateful night, following the expedition of his tribe's greatest warriors to retrieve the Master Emerald. Daylight became dusk and dusk to nightfall. Knuckles watched the night sky to gauge the passage of time, but the more stars blink into the existence, the more Knuckles realized that his tribe would not be coming back. In the distance, Knuckles heard the sound of a single owl's hoot. Waking up with a start, Knuckles scanned the room for a danger that wasn't there. He was safe, he was home, but something was riling Knuckles up and he wasn't going to try falling back asleep to find out. Plumbing down the bunk bed ladder, as quietly as he could, Knuckles tiptoed around the house creakiest spot Sonic had told him about, slipping out the back and into the garden as quietly as he could. Knuckles paced around the yard trying to figure where this sudden anger was coming from. Unaware of the human custom of giving dogs squeaky toys, Knuckles stepped on a rubber chicken in the garden, disturbing half the neighborhood by setting off a dog bark chain reaction. Present amongst those startled by the dog barks, Tom armed himself with a trusty baseball bat to fend off potential burglars and investigated the looming silhouette in the backyard.
It's clear I can see them. I have a baseball bat and I'm not afraid to use it.
Tom ordered the intruder, unleashing his inner sheriff.
But you can't see my hands because it's dark.
Knuckles stepped closer into the light given off by the kitchen, taking Tom's order literally. Tom should have realized who it was sooner: the short stature, the impression of quills from the dark form, or it could have been a short burglar wearing a hoodie. Nonetheless, Tom was relieved it was the newest member of their family.
Knuckles, it's just you. Thought we were dealing with another one, and not because I saw you, of course.
Tom quickly corrected himself, worried of hurting Knuckles' feelings for alluding to his past on the opposing side. Frowning at the insinuation, Knuckles took a moment to collect his thoughts before speaking.
I am aware of what I did and I'm not proud of it. Had I known how welcoming your plan was, I would not have allied myself with the mad bald man.
I'm glad you feel me. Why are you up so late? It's in the bunk bed. If you can't sleep well, we can always order a single bed for you.
Tom asked, fretting over what could be keeping the young Echidna from sleeping. Touched by Tom's willingness to fix everything, Knuckles looked away, hoping to hide away the wetness welling in his eyes.
It is not the towering bed. It is something irreplaceable.
Knuckles corrected Tom, with a heavy heart.
I'm listening.
I had a dream about my father never returning. I thought I was angry at the enemy for taking him away from me, but I was sad because I couldn't share my new home with him.
Knuckles wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. It was all too familiar for Tom, like looking at a grieving Sonic in a mirror that turned his fur red. Longclaw, Father Echidna. It was all the same. His red-furred kid was hurting and Tom was going to do something about it.
You're grieving anybody, and sometimes it takes different shapes, but whatever it feels like, you'll put it together.
Tom gently told Knuckles, inspiring a reluctant but genuine hug from Knuckles.
The ribs.
Tom exclaimed, reminding Knuckles to mind his own strength.
Sorry, Sheriff Tom.
Knuckles stepped back and smiled, the first smile Tom had seen on his face since encountering him that evening.
You can call me Sheriff or just Tom. You don't have to call me both. We're friendly.
Tom patted Knuckles' back and ushered him towards his bedroom. What could be a better ending after a nightmare than that, Tom thought, until an even better idea popped into his head, something that Knuckles could look forward to waking up to.
You know, Sonic told me he barely escaped the death traps in that temple. Tomorrow you Sonic and Tails have to watch Indiana Jones.
Is he a master trapper better like myself?
Knuckles peeked his head out through the gap in the door Tom was slowly closing.
Sort of, you'll have to see good at Knuckles.